Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Biology Bios. My name is Jim Edelman. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Biological Sciences at the University of Memphis. And my purpose with this podcast is really twofold. First, to remind everybody that most Thursdays during the semesters at 4 p.m. in Ellington Hall, we have guest speakers giving talks about their research in all sorts of different areas of biology, so please come and check those out. The other thing is to have those people on here and get to know them a little bit before they give those talks. So we'll be asking them what gets them super excited about their biology, about their research, and hear their advice for younger biologists, folks who are coming up in the sciences right now. I will say that I stole these questions shamelessly from Rhett Miller's great podcast called Wheels Off, so please check that out as well. But without further ado, let's get to our guest this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. I will start and say, Dr. Heather Bergan-Roller, thank you so much for doing this, and welcome to Biology Bios.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So first, as we're getting started, what I'd like to do is ask you if you could just kind of briefly introduce yourself, where you are, and sort of your main interests in biology.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at Northern Illinois University. I'm an associate professor. My background is in cell and molecular biology, but I don't do that anymore. And I'll be telling the audience at the seminar kind of some details about that path. And I'm happy to share here too. But what I do now is called discipline-based education research. And the most important is the education research. So I really look at the undergraduate and graduate level of higher ed and those students and the systems that they exist in, and try to figure out the best ways to support those students, to help the instructors of those students, for those students to be successful.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to ask you to dig in a little bit. I'm going to ask you to dig in a little bit more to that in a second.
Yeah,
But yeah, so we've had, well, we're going to have people that are all over the biological spectrum, folks that they're still in the lab, like doing that like bench work that you were kind of mentioning there, people that are on the education research side, people that are muddy boots ecologists, so it's really great to have this breadth of projects. So speaking of projects, I know you have a lot going on, kind of checking through your CV there. What is a current project that you're working on, and one that you're particularly excited about, and why are you jazzed about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the topic, after I went through the tenure process, so before tenure, it's kind of like a scramble, like how can I get out papers? How can I get to the next step? And then after that application process, I kind of took a deep breath, and I was like, exactly kind of what you're asking, like, what do I really care about? What am I jazzed about right now? And how can I pursue that? So the thing that I'm really excited about right now is including social justice topics into biology classrooms. So I have a couple different projects. One, thinking about inclusivity of different bodies, LGBTQ plus folks in anatomy and physiology. I don't think I'm going to talk about that at the seminar, but it's something I'm excited about. It's a newer project that I'm working in collaboration with folks here in anatomy and physiology, in the Center for the Study of Women, Gender, and Sexuality, and the Center for Black Studies. But the topic that I'm going to be sharing at the seminar, and the main thing that I've been working on in the past 3 years, has been a project that we call DARE, and it's Dialogues about Race, Racism, and Racial Equity in STEM. And eventually we'll get to STEM, but we're starting in biology because most of us are biologists, but we're a group of biologists, biology education researchers, instructors. We have a psychologist, we have a sociologist, we have a grad student. We have this really great team of folks looking at having these conversations about race, racism, racial equity in the context of our biology classrooms, which is not kind of traditionally where they're found, unlike my sociology friends. But having those conversations in order to promote inclusion, to promote cultural relevancy, and again, to promote just our students being successful in a wide variety of students.
That is super cool. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you that it's not something you typically think about in a biology classroom, but I know in my classrooms, it comes up, right? Like even in my immunology class, especially with COVID, right? We had this huge thing that we're all going through, and there are gross inequities, right? So it's very much there, and it's not something like, certainly not for me in graduate school. It's not something that we learned about. We learned about teaching just a little bit, and it was about like, how do you get the student to understand this thing that the cell does?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is super cool. Very, very much needed. I kind of have a follow-up question, just because we're in Tennessee, obviously.
Yes.
What's the political landscape for doing something like that in Illinois? I imagine it's a little different.
Yeah. Illinois, we haven't been explicitly told no in any realm, from the legislation or from our leadership, K-12, all the way up to higher education. It's been a very nice, kind of safe place to talk about those things. However, I will say we in DeKalb or in more rural Illinois, people say, and I think it's a great description, you have Chicago, and then you have the suburbs, and you have 20 miles of corn, and then you have DeKalb. So yeah, the local climate is a little bit different than maybe some of the Chicago schools get to experience, but I would say it's very open and welcoming. With the caveat to say that I'm on the college diversity, equity, inclusion, justice committee. And prior to this year, we talk about how we can improve things for our students. And we've really focused on LGBTQ plus issues and race issues. And this year we were explicitly asked to talk or to focus on disability issues, which absolutely deserves the time and the space. But I couldn't help myself from kind of wondering if maybe the political national landscape is part of the driver for the dean to ask us to focus there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's hard for me to know with these things. National politics aside, like university politics are, kind of confusing to me still.
Yeah.
And I've been in universities for a long time. Okay, so I think all that is very super cool. I kind of want to dive into a little bit more of like your personal journey in science. Yeah. And was there a time that you knew that you wanted to be a scientist, or was it sort of a gradual transition? Like how did you get where you are?
Yeah, kind of a gradual transition, and I feel like maybe later in my career than a lot of people. I'm first gen. My parents didn't go to college. Super hardworking, amazing people that started life earlier and harder, unfortunately, than I would hope for folks, but really gave me awesome opportunities and taught me really great work ethic that I still, am proud of today. I was the third daughter. So like I went to college just like where my sisters went to college, because I don't know.
Makes sense.
Right. And there I actually started off as an athletic training major. I really cared about people, and like the body was really interesting to me. And then I did a year and a half of that, and I was like, yeah, this just isn't right for me. And I loved my biology classes. In fact, in one of the courses we were taking, we learned about injury response and how the cells, react and heal after an injury. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Learning about that and at the cellular level. So I went to a friend of mine had just transferred out of athletic training into biology, and he was like, hey, this professor I talked to seems really cool. Like, you should just go talk to him. So I did, and he kind of recruited me over to biology. He ended up being my PhD mentor eventually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, really fell in love with the body again and how it works and the processes. So I stuck around, did biology, stuck around for grad school, did cell and molecular, looked at how like growth hormone promotes fat breakdown and growth in rainbow trout.
Oh,
so
cool.
not in the streams, but my boots are muddy. It's so muddy up here right now. I don't know how it is in Tennessee, but and then there I was like really set and going on to industry. But I was like, if I'm in academia, I should learn something about teaching because I don't know anything. And if that's what I have to do. So I took a course, and that really changed my trajectory from biology to biology education. I found that teaching wasn't this performance art that people are just naturally good at. much learned that performance art is also a thing of practice,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
innate ability. But I really saw how I could like blend the science that I loved and the helping people and interacting with people that I loved, and to help the next generation of people, whether they're scientists or healthcare providers or just voting citizens. Like that's really where I found my passion. And so I continued down that track, taking a postdoc in education research. And then I came here and at Northern Illinois as an assistant professor.
That's so cool that like yeah, it seems like this perfect blend, right? Like, but not one that you would know when you're,
Yeah.
18 years old and just going to college, right? Like,
Yeah. I didn't know that was a job, to
yeah,
be honest.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like that happens to a ton of people, and even people that like kind of have an interest in biology generally. Like, there's a lot of like, well, you're good at biology, probably you should do something medical, or
Yeah.
like sports training or
Yeah.
kinesiology or something like this, right?
Mhm.
And so like that's, I feel like still what we hear so much in high school, and then you get to college, and a lot of us have had these experiences of like, wait, somebody pays you to do that? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I could do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all right, this one is a little bit weird maybe.
Okay.
But like a lot of what we do as professors is writing, and we give talks. There's a lot of like external evaluation. You mentioned tenure. You have people from internal to your university, external, telling you whether you're good enough to make the next pay grade.
Mm-hmm.
We also have internal critics that are like telling us, I don't know about that idea. That's not your best work, man. Or like, you should just steer clear of that. So I wanted to kind of ask you about that sort of internal voice, and how do you deal with that internal voice, and maybe make it work for you, or at least make it less loud?
That's a phenomenal question, and I appreciate that. It kind of hits me to my soul. um, I to tell a little story. Last semester I taught a grad seminar on research and inclusive teaching, and we were talking about imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And they, were kind of talking about it, and I shared with them something that had been shared with me, and it was like, it's not your problem. It's a problem like of the system that then kind of forces, I would say, these negative internal thoughts that you're talking about. And I was like, and sometimes I have some pretty severe imposter syndrome.
I mean, yeah, I think,
Right.
yeah.
And then they were like, well, how do you deal with it? And I was like, I focus on my life and how I really enjoy my life. I have two young, awesome kids, and I enjoy Saturday mornings watching my oldest play basketball. And I don't want to be anywhere else. So I kind of talk about the balance of life that I have,
Yeah.
and really enjoy. As far as the work that I do, I kind of second guess as well sometimes. Am I the right person to be doing this work? Have I done the right things to share the voices that should be shared in this context? And then for that, I solve my problems through talking with collaborators and friends. And sometimes I just have to get it out. If I hold it in, it just festers, and it's not a good thing. I just have to really talk through. And I have really phenomenal colleagues here at NIU in biology and outside biology. And the colleagues that I have in the DARE collaboration, they're all really awesome, honest. They're not going to sugarcoat things for me. They're going
Right.
to, kind of give it to me like I need to hear it. But most of the time I'm harder on myself than anybody else is. So
Yeah, that's really good advice, is having that group of folks. And yeah, like the things that your internal critics, or my internal critic says, are like, I would not say that aloud to other people, right?
right.
Like my
Mm-hmm.
internal critic is really rude. Like, the hell with that guy.
Right.
But yeah, I like that a lot. And I think, you said something else there that I think is strikes me as kind of a good way to turn that inner critic to the positive of, like, you were asking, am I the person to do this? Am I expressing these voices the way they should be? I think that's an awesome check to have in the sort of work you do, right? Like, I would really want a person doing that sort of work to ask that question. So
Yeah.
I think you're kind of taking it and making it a superpower instead of a negative, which is awesome. Okay, so speaking of that sort of like advice on how to deal with things, but going back a little bit more broadly, like what advice would you have for like a 20-ish year old version of yourself, someplace in undergrad, but in today's world of academia, biology, in today's world?
Yeah, good question. And I feel like I actually get this question a lot with my students. They come into my office and I try to have my office as, we can talk about class, we can talk about your life, we can talk about whatever. And the thing that I have pushed them the most is to get hands-on experience with what they think they want to do. Something I didn't share about my story is when I was an athletic training major and then I switched to biology, I actually was pre-PA. And I had shadowed this orthopedic PA into surgeries, and I loved that. And then we would do rounds, and getting to meet these people was really cool. And then to get into PA school in a lot of medical professions, you have to have patient care hours that are not just shadowing, but you have to be like doing the job. So I got a job at the hospital doing patient transport, and I hated it. Like I absolutely hate I don't know what it was. It was very lonely. It was very, I like being independent, but it was very lonely and there was a lot of downtime and seeing 23-year-olds on the oncology floor, it was not good for my mental health.
Sure.
I was like, oh, I did it. I have a good work ethic, but I think I worked that job for 3 months and I was like, I cannot handle this. And then I changed my trajectory. I was like, okay, healthcare is not exactly what I need to do in my life. So that is the advice that I give to students is try to get hands-on. It can't just be shadowing. It has to be when it's your responsibility that really shows you your future is like, does this spark you? Does this give you energy or does this drain you? And you're just a miserable person at the end of the day.
I mean, and I feel like I hear the other side of that, like more often, in terms of like, well, I know how to get my job pretty well. I don't know how to get other jobs that well, but people like, what should I do to do research? Well, get research experience, work in a lab. Mm-hmm. And, maybe that'll really be exciting to you. But you hit on getting that real world experience and not liking it. Like that's not a pleasant experience, but that is so valuable.
Yeah. I'm happy it happened when it did and not 2 years, 4 years, 10 years down the road. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I don't mean to minimize it because those 3 months probably sucked. Like they really didn't sound like they were fun, right? Like that was not the good fit. Yeah. So, but yeah, in retrospect, you can kind of see like, oh yeah, I'm glad that I had that experience. Well, that's really handy. I'm hopeful that our listeners and our students are going to hear that and take away some good lessons from what you've talked about just in general. Do you have is there anything else I should have asked you is what I'm trying to say? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. That's the things I like to do for fun. I'll tell you the things I like to do for fun besides work.
Hit me with it.
Like I said, my kids are in sports, soccer, basketball, dance. I love watching them. I play volleyball. And in fact, I'm playing my first volleyball tournament in like 10 years on Friday.
Wow, good for you.
I'm a little worried, but I'm excited. Yeah. I like to run and I like to read a lot of fiction.
Nice.
To differ from the reading I do at work.
Nice. Yeah. I like this idea of balance. And I think the more that you talk to people, you realize that the idea of the single-minded one-track professor, I mean, I think it exists. The people that are just like, if they had a different job, they would go home at night and read books about organic chemistry or something. Like, I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, right.
But I think the majority of us like do have some balance, and I like you. I kind of need that right brain, left brain thing. Like, yeah. So that's super cool. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, I think that is about all I have actually. So unless I'm missing something, I think
sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I'm really looking forward to your talk and to meeting you in person.
All right. Sounds great. It was nice to meet you too.
So thanks very much to our guest, Heather Bergan-Roller. You can check out her talk next week. That is February 15th, 2024 in Ellington Hall at 4 p.m. We'll look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much.